So in this video, we're going to finish the last of the block settings that are not the schedulers and are not the very, very advanced stuff. And then we'll just quickly cover some user fields that we haven't touched on. So I'm back in my receiving block. We go to our settings. So we've been through all of these. And we've shown you how to do the uploading settings. And then we'll be touching on this, the block scheduler, which uses the same principles as the uploading. And that'll be in the next module. So here's a few more settings. So we did look at the adding roles to this block, but there are a few more. One, for example, is tick to allow anybody logged in to see this block. That basically makes the block completely public for every single user in the system. So what I'm going to do is pick a block that I know a user doesn't have access to, let's say report on receiving. And we click here, so there's no roles. So in theory, this block shouldn't be, prior to ticking that, shouldn't be accessible by anyone. But what I'll do is log in as our employee. With the product returns. And as you can see, report on receiving is available, even though there's no roles added to it and there's no users added to it. The next thing I'm going to show you, it's related to the same settings, and it's to do with providing specific user access. So we go back to report and receiving. So there's two more settings in the block user and role access. One of them is that you can add a user directly into a block as opposed to using roles. This is sort of a legacy feature. We don't really usually recommend it. And the reason is because there shouldn't be any need using roles, because in the past people had to add loads of users to every block they created and it took them quite a long time. But with a role, they only have to add one role. And for just general user management and good practice, it's often nicer to use the roles. But yes, you can add the user directly. So we'll just do that now. So I've added the employee. If I logged back out and came back in, the employee will have access to this block. I'll just untick that. I won't actually demonstrate that because it's pretty obvious what will happen. You'll see the block appear just like as if it was a role or if it was this setting as well. But this is giving them direct access, all right. The next thing is removing from the list but not access restricted. What this does is remove the block from the actual list of blocks when you open up the module, but the user could still access the block using the URL. So let's demonstrate that. Employee account has access to the block, and let's log in as well. Firstly, let's get the URL. So the URL is in the browser up here, and we'll copy that in a notepad file. And now we'll log in as the employee account. As you can see, I've loaded up product returns, and the module or the block isn't there, even though the employee account has access to it. So that is where we will load up the page now just directly just to show you. And the block's still loaded for them, even though it wasn't in the module list. So when I go back to product returns, you don't see it there. But then when we go back to the block itself, it is there. They have access. That's used for tidying up blocks and making modules neater. Quite often you'll have situations where maybe you have a linked data field linking to a block, or you might have a link from the home page, and any reason you might be linking the block itself without wanting it to appear in a module. You'll find as you build modules that there will be reasons for that, especially around user experience. You'll just want them to maybe have cleaner modules. Now, the one caveat with that is I'm an admin logged in fully here as a no-code developer. Because of that, I can still see that block. We may be removing that even for no-code developers because it's a bit tricky for someone to be able to figure that one out if you're doing your own no coding. So on that basis, we may consider even the no-code person doesn't see it because they will still be able to see it in the edit side. So that's our block user and role access settings. We're going to move on from this because this is quite legacy, and the mail alert field actually covers everything that can be done in this. So, it's possible you might not even see this by the time we're doing the video. The list of available field slugs. This isn't functional. This is just a list to have handy whenever you might need it. So as you saw, the field slugs are used in the mail alert fields. They're used in exporting templates. They're used in math fields. They're used in lots of different things where it's handy to know the field slug. And all this is just a list of them. So it's just a reference point really. And finally, the last block setting I'm going to show you, and it's not really a setting, it's more like an action. And that's, we'll be removing this, but it's the duplicate block. And that quite simply duplicates the block. So I do duplicate block. Firstly, it runs the duplication, and when it does, it redirects you to the edit side of the duplicated block, and it gives the name copy. It duplicates everything, fields, rules, settings, everything. If it's connected to another block, then it's connected to that other block as well. If it's getting data from another block, it'll get the data from another block. So it literally duplicates everything. As you can see, we've got settings here turned on and off that are duplicated. So that's the block settings covered. We're just going to touch on just 3 more fields that are kind of related to user access as well. Not just user access, but user representation and user data as well. First one is a very simple one. It's called the user select field. It doesn't even have any parameters, and we'll say type user. And we'll just move that up. And what this does is it gets all the users in your system and allows you to choose whichever one you want. It's a handy tool. It's not used very often, but it's good to just have it there. You can also add multiple ones if you want. So we'll just say typical employee, and it just stores it as comma separated data. So like I'm saying, that is a handy tool. It's nothing that you might need too often, but it's good to know it's there. The next one is, go back to our fields. It's the other settings in our signature and authentication. So we've already covered the displays digital signature pad. So what we'll do is we'll just put that in anyway. And I'm going to duplicate and do another one. because what we haven't covered is the option to use an existing signature. So this means that the user doesn't have to put in the signature every time. They just click a button. Every user has an ability to add their signature to their account. So when you go to account and you scroll down, there's a link here from your account to add your digital signature. So let's just sign one more time. I'm just going to do A, and this is mobile friendly too. Add signature, updates the signature, and we go back to our block. So here's the one, the first field that we'd shown already. So that's just my own signature there, and click apply. But then there's the sign here, and it just gives the signature right away, which is very handy because it means that the user doesn't have to sign it every time. They can just click the sign button. So next up is the authentication form. So we'll just say signed in. I'm going to delete these signature ones just to remove any confusion. Actually, I think I deleted the authentication form one by accident. Now, auth form. What this does is it forces the user to put in their own details. So let's just say part 001, amount received 30. In this, they have to log into their own account. Click authenticate. And the response value I set, as you saw when I was editing the field, is signed in. And you press submit, and now you have signed in. So it's a very good way of validating a user. The use case could be that there's maybe 2 or 3 users sharing the same device. They don't all have to log in and log back out. Or sometimes it's just nice to have a double verification, just in case someone left their screen open. It's important to note that this doesn't force the form to be filled out. So you can submit. So let's just show an example. It's possible to submit, but to get around this, so I'm going to put in a wrong password here, even just to show you. If I do authentication, incorrect password, please try again. Again, I can submit. However, this is where joining up different Blocworx features becomes handy. So as you saw when I was creating this field, I chose the response value. So I said it was signed in. There's a small bug there where it hasn't appeared by itself. It should have. I said signed in. So now let's say we say, well, this has to have a value. So we're going to say it must be equal to signed in. So please fill out your credentials before continuing. Submit rule. Now let's try again. This doesn't have a value yet. So when I press submit, please fill out your credentials. Let's put in wrong details. Incorrect password. Once again, there's just no way for me to continue in this form unless I put in the correct details. I press authenticate. Now it says signed in. Now the value is equal to what we're saying it's allowed to be equal to, and we get to continue. So that's how you put together a few different features in Blockworks. And the reason we have that is because not everyone always wants to force the user to have successfully signed in. Sometimes this might be an optional thing, or there could be any reason for it. So it's better to give choice and for the no coder to choose how it's going to be built, you know. So there's one last user component, and that's the create user pop-up. It's a bit of a unique one. It probably wouldn't be used that often, but sometimes sometimes an admin might want to create a user while they're in a block. So let's just say uh, block users. We'll put that in admin. It's kind of like a shortcut, really. So there's a few fields it expects first, so we'll just figure out what those fields are. So there's the username, the full name, and the profile filter. All of these things we've covered. So they can be any name. So or the field can be any name. I will say enter username. I just have to check again what they were. Oh yeah, the full name, the profile filter. We'll be adding more of these in the future. Enter full name. And the profile filter, you could even just say like select customer, you know, and do a drop down. And this is where this comes in handy. Laptops repairing. And customer 2. So now we create the actual user field itself. Create user pop-up, add user now. This can be any text that appears in the button. So now we say, well, what's the field we want for the user name? The full name one. Again, it doesn't have to say username, it doesn't have to say full. Like, look at this one, profile filter, and I've called that select customer. We give it a color. We won't tick this, but I'll show you straight afterwards. And just for neatness, we could always just do a few more things. Like, let's hide the label. So hide the label for the field. We will maybe hide the submit button. So we've been through all this in this module. Hide the submit button. So we'll just say user123, full name user123. Let's pretend they're customer 2, and you say add user now. Gives you a pop-up on the screen, which is actually loading the user section. So it's just a handy. We'll be improving this to pass in the email address as well. You'll have to give the password. You can't pass the password in from the block. So that'll always be the case for security reasons. It populates the profile filter with the customer. You can do whatever roles you want and permissions. Again, we are looking to improve this field in the future to be able to pass all the stuff in from the block. It's worth noting this field isn't used a huge amount, so as a result, we haven't added those features yet. Click save, user gets created, and the block is closed. Often you might want a log of what you just did there, and that's why I hid the submit button and hid the label for that field. But there is one more feature, which is submit the form after the user has been added. So we'll just do one more. Oh, this has to be a username. Add user. Press save, and we do user added, and it also submitted the form, so you can see the record down here. and that's why we don't allow the password to be entered here. So that's the finishing of our block settings and finishing of most of our fields as well. The only fields we've left to cover throughout this whole training is our chart results, and well, mainly just the chart. We've done the results box. I'm going to give a synopsis of these, but there's going to be advanced modules for these because it's not just no coding that's done to achieve these, to be able to use these fields. You have to be able to write APIs and stuff as well. Anything else that I haven't covered, we will be hiding because it's going to be legacy, possibly by the time you've seen this video. Thank you. Bye bye.